Hi, thank you all for coming out tonight. This is the third in a series of meetings, and my name is Adam Hubbard, and I work for Stevens & Associates, and our firm is working with the Housing Authority to address the need for housing, senior and disabled housing. I see mostly familiar faces, and I'm happy that people are continuing to come back, and I'll do a little backtracking to just so that everybody is up to speed. And if I'm going too fast on the backtrack, feel free to slow it down. But we have a fair amount of material to cover tonight, so I do want to move fast. And I'm going to have to beg for your patience here as I work through some kinks with the machine as well. I guess well, the first thing I'll say is that we've been at this since about March, and we formed a committee with about 10 or 12 people, and I'll just introduce the people of the committee for efficiency's sake. We have Chris Connolly from the Housing Authority, Isaac Wagner, who works for the Housing Trust, Alan Myrick, who is with the Affordable Housing Corporation. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Brattleboro Area Affordable Housing.
Brattleboro Area Affordable Housing. Rod Francis from the Town Planning Department, and of course you all know Chris. I appreciate you turning on.
What do you want?
Hope one is out.
Sorry. Oh, it's high-tech senior.
And this is Tom Gendrino. He's helping me out. He's from our office.
Mine vibrates.
Here's my first technical problem. Is getting it to fit on the screen. See if I can.
Doing something
No,
weirder.
it's
There's something weirder than that. I don't know what's up, Adam.
Bear with me one moment, please.
There you go.
There we go. Simple button, auto setup.
You know, all I did was shift the problem to the other side of the page. But that's all right.
I'll go back and forth.
You hit that button, yeah.
It's easier. It's better if you start the sentence.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this is a little bit of recap, but the purpose and need statement is sort of our guiding mission to this project, and the purpose is obviously to provide low to moderate income residents, seniors, and individuals with disabilities with safe, accessible, and affordable, and an appealing place to live. And as we go through this, it's really important to remember that it's the residents that we're doing it for, but there's also other interests, such as the community and the natural resources, and then we also have to conform to all the regulatory and funding requirements as well. So it's important from certain sides of the fence to say this is really about people and where they're going to live. It's also important for the people who live here to remember that there's a lot of other interests and a lot of other hurdles that we have to jump through and interests that we have to serve. So that's the need here. And as we go through the site, what we're doing is looking at sites to provide housing. And when we're looking at all the different sites, we have this list of criteria, and this list will come up again. And actually, it'll come up in the handout you have. Let me back up a little bit. You should all have a packet that I left at the doorway there, and also there's a sign-in sheet. And the first thing is the agenda. So I'll get to the agenda right here. And what we're going to do is just, as I said, recap our goals, go through the schedule and the process, and then a little bit of the recap of the previous meetings, and then we'll really talk about the sites and where we've arrived at this point. And the second sheet in your handout outlines the sort of strategy that we're using, and it's a series of 4 meetings. This is the committee that we formed, and the 4 big boxes across the top are the 4 public meetings. So we started with the Issues Concerns meeting here. We went up to Hayes and we had an alternative sites review where we sort of introduced some of the broad list of sites. And then we are now at selected sites review. And we're trying to narrow down this site. We picked out 25 sites to start the process, and we looked at them with certain lenses and certain level of scrutiny, and then we're trying to get down to the final sites, and that's about 6 sites that we're looking at right now. On September 20th, we will sort of present the final findings and where we ended up in this process. I hope you have that on the meeting, on your calendars. And then the rest is just sort of a graphic schedule, if you will, with some of our tasks along the way in terms of developing the purpose and needs, going through the alternative study, and then coming up with a preferred alternative. This is just a sort of pictogram of the same process. We start with this long list, and on page 3 or 4 here, well, I slipped in the website so you'll all have a reference to get to the website, because all the documentation we showed here tonight, including the PowerPoint, will be on the website. And all the organizational stuff is on the website. It's a good information source. After that, we have this list that we started with, this long list, 25 sites. And we go through and we look at them, we evaluate them on some of these broad assessment characteristics. What are the impacts of a development? How would that site function? And what are the sort of quality characteristics of that site? Again, you sort of have the list of sites, and you have the assessment characteristics on the right. And I'll get back to that. I'm going to go backwards in this process. You'll see this process kind of jumps forward and backward, almost by necessity. And then we'll get to a short list of sites where we got fairly firm last meeting, and now we're into this sort of we're into this deeper study and evaluation of the sites that we selected. And once we have those sites that we feel good about, those 5 or 6 sites, we're gonna really drill into them and come up with some rough costs and enough information that we can go out and try to do a feasibility study and do some real design. The designs you'll see tonight are just ideas, just concepts to say, oh, we can fit 10, we can fit 20, we can fit X number of units, and it will be nice or disconnected, or we can at least have a reference to point to. So again, this is just kind of outlining the whole program. So when we're looking at the sites, we looked, when we had that list of 25, we looked at sort of, we had to narrow it and say right off the bat, we're not going to study 25 sites, so we have to look at them and say, this one works or it doesn't work. You know, this is too industrial, this one's too disconnected, and we have to get down until we can really study these 3 important things. Does it suit our location? Is it a location that's suitable for housing and for you guys? Can we develop a nice site so that there's the amenities that you would like, some open space, some areas to meet with your neighbors, some quiet places, and could it accommodate the architecture that would be pleasing and functional and a place you'd like to live? So those are the kind of the rough 3 that we're going to look at. And now I'm going to go into just sort of examples around town and sort of the theoretical of it before we get down to the site specifically. So location, you know, is it walkable to neighborhood institutions? Is there civic spaces like churches and town halls? Is there playgrounds and shopping? Is it accessible to transportation, transit stops, and open space? That sort of talks about the location within Brattleboro, within the town that we're interested in reviewing a site against. And you've seen these ones a couple times now, and you see 2 things in these slides. These are what the site would look like. This is Butterfield Common out in Dover. This was a housing trust project, and it worked out pretty nicely. There's some good spaces, some drop-off areas, some open space. This is Burge Street. This is where the housing trust offices are, and 29 units of affordable housing. It's kind of an urban setting, but there's a courtyard, so this site works out pretty well. There's enough parking. There's not a lot of open space to walk in a park or anything, but it's accessible to some neighborhood services. This is the Colonial up here. This is I don't know what you call that, if you call that an urban setting, but that's the corner of High Street and Oak Street, and there's 12 units in that. That's got some nice architecture, and it's a pretty nice building in my opinion. Here are a couple rural examples with some bigger sites. This is West River Valley Senior Housing, and this is a independent living facility, and that's that building. And then this is the assisted living facility, and that's that building. And this is a really rural setting. This has a drilled well up on the hill and a in-ground septic system. There's no municipal facilities, and you don't really walk many places from here. It's a rural setting. Same thing with Vernon Senior Housing. Great open space, but it's not walkable. You have to drive or be driven. I think the bus might go out there. I don't know if the bus comes out here. These are just examples, and sort of just keep these in your mind as we move forward and we look at a parcel. You're going to have to imagine the architecture and imagine the site and sort of there's a checklist here that will remind you of all the criteria that we sort of look at when we look at these sites. But it's important to sort of envision what a 3-story, this is 24 units. And that's a pretty typical size of what a lot of senior housing is built these days. I think that one's 24 units as well. 2 different types of architecture, but on the same site. This one's 24 units. So they're all 3 of those are 24 units, and you'll see other examples of that. And these are just different architectural examples. These are from Concord, Mass, and upstate New York. So again, we have these 25 sites, and this is you have that in your list. And we've been through this, so we're not going to dwell on it. But there's the 25 sites. Oops, I guess I mixed up the slides here. This is just a more urban example. This is from Burlington, and this is from Cambridge, Mass. Just a different style of architecture. So the list of 25 goes with this map, and this map is also found on the website. And you could sort of look at this list, and you could say, we can review some of it individually if you want or if you're interested. But some of these parcels were really nice, but they're remote from town. Dalem Chalet, that had potential, but we're not sure about ownership, and it's a little steep, so we took it off the list. These are just examples. Wow, I'm all over. My slideshow's a little wacky here, sorry. Apologize, really. These are some of the other sites. Austin, or the Delta Business Campus, a field out on Guilford Street. And then this is Putney Road. And here's Renew. That one was sort of highly considered and still made the list of 10. I'm going to go back a few slides here because the one that I slipped out of order. This is a really important slide. And one of the challenges of this project is determining how many units we're going to need. And the process has been complicated because Melrose Terrace, thank you. I'm like, gun shy about it now. Because Melrose Terrace, it presents us, it's not like a typical development project where you go out and try to find a parcel. Melrose Terrace has some potential to be preserved. And determining how that was going to work would influence how many units we were going to need. So again, it's not a linear process for us. We just really had to work on how many units we were going to need at the end of the day. For the sake of conversation, there are 72 units at Hayes, there are 80 units at Melrose, and there are 28 units at Moore Court. And one of the reasons that we put Moore Court on that list is because there's an opportunity to use Melrose Terrace for family housing instead of senior and disabled housing. And this speaks to, this sort of touches on one of the most important questions we've talked about and topics we've talked about at the previous meetings, is that because Melrose is entirely within a floodplain, in a flood hazard area, it is disqualified for a wide range of funding. And you cannot put sensitive populations within a floodplain or flood hazard area. And that includes senior, disabled, and daycares or child care facilities. So along the way through this process, we've sort of determined that, well, maybe we can take those 28 units and move them here and then be able to develop Moore Court for senior housing. And Moore Court has lots of benefits in terms of it's flat, it's accessible, it's close to services, and it's due for renovation or reconstruction. Also in this conversation is what we've been through as a community in the past 2 years. We lost the Brooks House, which had 60 units, 55 or 60 units. Mountain Home Park, it didn't lose 29 units, but there are 29 units that are within the floodway. Glen Street lost 11 units. And I don't know if that took care of, is that true, Mary?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Did that take care of all?
everybody at Glen, except we're still futzing around with Sylvia's place,
Yeah.
are either dead in nursing homes or they found other places. So, you can scratch Glen, and probably Mountain Home can absorb 6 of the ones on the floodway. That's not a sure thing, but, so probably you come down to 23, instead of,
But you lost 11 units.
I lost 11 units.
Yeah.
I lost 11 units, but I'm saying that it has been, you know, absorbed.
Yeah.
If you still, there aren't people who need housing.
Right. There are 11 residents that are, I mean,
But if you
everybody's
want to
gonna.
do it by units, you're right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the point we're sort of getting at here is that between the 3 parcels owned by the Brattleboro Housing Authority and the mobile home parks and Brooks House, we need 278 housing units, and that's not accounting for an increase in population. You know, so it's a real need in the community, and so as we go through this, I mean, I don't think we're going to find a place for 300 housing units, but it's smart to plan for it. So keep that in the back of your mind as well, and keep that in mind as we sort of look at these parcels. I'm going to skip forward here a little bit. So we got through this process of having the 25. These are the 10 parcels that were clear to us had some potential, that were worth a closer look. These are the ones that sort of met some of the basic functions of quality, or basic quality of spaces, limited impact to natural resources, and you could provide the function. And these are the 10 that we looked at with some scrutiny. And I'll just show you I'll just sort of flip through the aerial pictures of where these are. So here's Melrose Terrace. Here's the flood hazard area. Okay, so just imprint that in your mind. Here's the whole parcel, and the only part of the parcel that is not in the flood hazard zone is this part, and actually that building is too. So there's not one building in Melrose Terrace that is not part of the flood hazard zone. A question was raised about our plan to take down buildings that are in the floodway and preserve buildings on the back side of the parcel that have experienced flood damage. And that's been an ongoing and important question to answer. And it's...
Wouldn't it be easier to put up barriers instead of moving?
Yeah, that's a pretty common question, and yes is the answer, but it's not a direct yes. There's a little bit of complexity to it, and the complexity really lies with this checked area. This is the floodway. This is a really heavily regulated area in terms of the federal government, state government, and local government. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but these are the units that were in Glen Park, and these are the 7 units that front the brook in Melrose. Along here are those 7 units that we're talking about. And what happened in the flooding was somebody, at a previous generation, the same logic was used. That we will build a flood wall out to protect those buildings, and it did a really good job. It protected those buildings. But when the water came down, it hit the head of that flood wall, and that channel the water couldn't get through that channel. So it backed up, and then it pushed out the back of that flood wall and came down this back side of the development. And that is that we won't be able to continue to do that. We won't be allowed to build a taller wall along the front and save all the buildings. There's no aid.
Another point is these flood zones, these happenings are only like once in 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's somewhat true. There have been 3 floods in the last 10 or 15 years that have reached some of these. This is the 100-year boundary, and there's a 100-year boundary down in central down on Flat Street, and 3 times the water has reached that level. And so we get into this really complex dialogue about frequency of occurrence and what you can do to protect it. But the fact of the matter is that flooding is going to continue, and the problem, because it happened once, doesn't mean it's not going to happen in another 100. It's not going to happen for another 100 years. In fact, what's more likely going to be happening is that all that sediment coming down from the mountains is filling up the stream channels. So the flooding is going to be getting worse. And to add to that is the frequency of these storms, these torrential storms, has been increasing. So it's really it's not a supported. This is back to that original point. There's a bunch of interests that are involved, and there's some logic that would support some level of protection, but there's also these funding agencies that will just say, we won't do that. This is in a floodway, we're not going to fund that.
And I think it was in this week's Commons, the Irene supplement, there was some statistics in there that said between 1948 and now, the frequency of storms, severe storms, has increased by some huge portion. So that
We could probably look that
that's
up in
like the last 50 years. So they're happening more and more.
It was explained to me by the Agency of Natural Resources people that the 100-year flood is misnamed. It's actually a 1 in 100 chance every year that you may get this kind of flooding. And now the math is beyond me, but that comes out to you can expect a flood every 12 years. And what you said when you said every 10 to 15 years, recently we've been getting flooding. It works out that way. So to think that it's really, oh well, wait another 100 years, it doesn't work that way.
I think suffice it to say that after a considerable amount of study and a considerable amount of collective knowledge put into this, the course of action that we think is the most reasonable is to eliminate 7 units, provide the stream.
Buildings.
What's that?
7 buildings.
7 buildings, thank you. Is to eliminate 7 buildings and provide the stream with more flood storage and put our focus on preserving what's here. And that means moving the flood wall from where it currently sits along the front of the river to maybe the edge of the road. Yeah, Ron.
I'm asking this because I understand what you're saying and I agree with you 100%, but what can you do to stop the people way up the road? Because Glen Park, Melrose Terrace, they might not be affected as much because because the reason is some of these people, they're putting up their own barriers, so they're making the brook so it is way narrow. I mean, I go to Bennington all the time, and you can see where they're putting stuff up. So you're making it where it might only be this wide, and then boom, the river comes up, the brook, what do you want to call it, and so they got a big one, and then you have small ones. So that's part of the problem too, isn't it? Is that part of the problem?
That is a huge part of the problem. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. We've talked about this over and over again. Like it's an equity problem. Like people's actions upstream are affecting other people's lives downstream.
Right.
And if we could either be part of the problem or part of the solution.
Right.
If we pinch the brook here, all we're doing is just moving the problem either upstream or downstream. And there's the sort of good practice part of it, but there's also a really important regulatory policy issue that we're not tackling at this point, but for you all to be understanding of it is really important because it's decisions that are happening as we go, and policies are changing. The pattern of development that has been taking place for the last 50 years is created some serious problems, and now we've got to fix it. Yeah.
I know the area in up near where the RV center is. There's a pond up there,
Yeah.
And when the water comes, when the rain comes, the level of the water rises and it washes out.
Yeah.
It gets washed out, and which creates a flood downstream.
You know, one of the biggest ironies in all of this is that one of the worst problems is all the bridges and culverts that were put in by the state and towns through the years weren't big enough. You know, and it's a real problem. It's a money problem. You know, you're not going to spend $2 million on a bridge if you can do it for $1 million. And so you build it for $1 million, and it's just not wide enough. And so the water backs up and jumps the channel and runs down the far side of Route 9. So, you know, that's sort of beyond the scope of this project, but it's really important to understand those dynamics that are happening. And, you know, you could go talk to the folks who developed Cumberland Farms and ask them how much they liked building retention ponds to deal with the runoff from their site. Boy, they fought that tooth and nail. But the idea was they put in more pavement. You got to build a pond that accommodates that runoff, so you're not making the problem worse. Okay. Well, they're just going to say, how come he didn't have to do it and he didn't have to do it? And that's not a reason not to do it. It's just we're moving into this new era of good practice. And we're going to be part of that too. That's part of our responsibility. You know, if we can widen the stream channel and provide more flood storage, we're providing more benefit to the community. I don't mind going back to these are questions that have come up in every meeting, and I really don't mind going back to that because it almost defies logic why you would tear down some $1 million worth of perfectly good infrastructure, you know, when there might be a $500,000 solution. But we've worked this one out, and this is the plan. This is the course of action we've decided on. Here's so again, I'm sort of just talking about the 10. This is the sort of list of 10. This is and Melrose is staying on the list. Don't get me wrong. I'll show you a plan in a little bit that shows what it's going to look like and how many units we can save. Melrose is on the list. That made the cut. Hayes Court. That's what it looks. That's the flood area around Hayes Court. Just so you all have a visual of what it was like. You know, this was. I believe the mapping was done after Hayes Court was built. If you look at this turnaround down here, if you look at this turnaround and the way these, I don't know that if that's for sure, but this is a lot of fill. And you can see it necks the river down here, and it creates all this flooding up behind it. So I don't know the sequence of when the mapping took place and when Hayes Court was built, but something tells me that the mapping came
When
afterwards.
was Hayes built?
60.
No, 72.
Adam, what's that white band that goes around like a question mark? What does that stand for?
That's the 500.
500 years.
That's the 500.
500.
The so-called 500 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another flood hazard district on here, and that's the fluvial erosion that's not shown. And it further encroaches on this area and the previous area.
For the most part, the fluvial erosion headed layer gets pretty close to the 500.
Yeah,
It's not an exact match, but it's a pretty rough
that is a pretty
approximation.
rough match. So this is what we view as the developable land of Hayes Court, and we still want to treat this carefully in terms of where we build. We think building up along this side of the parcel is the way to go.
We think the mapping was probably done in the 80s, and it was based on the actual mapping. I think dates from the 80s, and the membership of the town in the National Flood Insurance Program. The town joined under emergency conditions when the program first started back in the mid-70s. I think it was 74 or 75, and then officially joined in 1984, I think, some 10 years later. But
And the mapping was based on USGS maps.
right, I don't know if the question I don't have a good answer to is how much ground truthing they did.
Yeah.
At that point, I think they actually, but my understanding is they used an ortho layer to review the maps at that point. And then the last thing is that in 2007, they redid the entire Connecticut River, and from that, reset elevations up every tributary. So that was a major update to the maps, which is highly technical, but it has a minor effect as far as how
It has changed.
Yep.
In the, we don't need to get into
No.
flooding again, it really gets complicated. But, so here's Moore Court, and just to give you a little orientation, this is Green Street and the Green Street School. This is Samuel Eliot. This is Elliott Street here, the fire station off to your right. This is a really good parcel in terms of developability, except for that it's got existing housing. The good thing is that that existing housing is due for updates and reconstruction, so the timing sort of works out for us here. This one definitely made the cut. Those three, you know, when we talk about these parcels, there's sort of all the criteria, and you'll see this criteria come up in a later sheet. And it's really hard to weight the criteria, but one of the heaviest weighted items is ownership. You know, is your ability to secure a piece of land, and the fact that we have 3 housing authority owned parcels really rose those 3 parcels to the top. It's just natural that it does. And our goal is to get as many units that we can out of those in a reasonable fashion. That's a nice place to live. You know, you could build another Samuel Eliot high-rise, maybe. Zoning might get in your way. But you could build something.
I don't know if you, well,
But that's not our intent. You know, we don't need to go into that discussion. We don't need to go into that discussion. The point is we're trying. We've identified these parcels as ability to hold some portion of our needed units. Remember, we need to get 268 units, or 178 or more. This is the Academy School parking lot. This is Western Avenue and the Triangle up South Street. Here's Melrose Terrace over here, Bonnievale Road. This parking lot has a lot of good things going for it. Oops, sorry, wrong button. It also has a lot of difficulty as well. The parking is obviously used. The fire station has plans for an addition. They're thinking about expanding over into this area. There's plenty of ideas about improving the green out in front. Really good ideas that the West Brattleboro Association and the town is proposing. And the Academy School really needs this parking. That being said, if you look at a historic village pattern, you have it built out with this all this nice architecture. The village, I think that might be the Village Green, which is senior housing. It's not?
No, just rental.
It's just rental. But there's some, the old Stockwell store, and then you see this big open spot. So this has a lot of potential to serve the community, where you could build something where people could live close to amenities, close to church, close to a school, close to a fire station. You have municipal water and sewer. You could, you know, very inexpensive to hook up. It's flat. There's not a lot of earthwork. It's owned by the town school district, which is both a benefit and an obstacle. So we've spoken with the school, with the supervisory union, and they said, that's an interesting idea. And we spoke with the principal, and he said, yeah, that's an interesting idea. So they didn't say no. That's all I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I agree with building on new land, but to take down existing park, I don't agree with.
Well, we think we can resolve the parking issue, but we're not sure about that. That's going to be another level of study. I can tell you that a development here wouldn't happen unless parking needs for the church, the fire station, and Academy School were accommodated. So that's a prerequisite for this to be developed. Whether we have funding to do structured parking, or whether we can negotiate with the Dalums to build more into the bank, or use some of the land behind the fire station, those are the kind of questions that we're going to work out. Yeah?
I just had one. If you look at the road,
Yeah.
do you really think that people with children would like to be around a school? Why would seniors and people with disabilities care if they're around a school or not? That's my question.
That's a really good
Because
question.
Some of the properties, if you look at them, they're all around schools.
Yeah.
Some people don't like to be around children, and certainly myself, when you're around your teenagers and stuff, then you gotta worry about your house being broken into, and I've already dealt with that. I'm just saying, look at the room, and why would seniors and just us people care about with why they're not run a academy school or a school?
Yeah.
We definitely need to be where we can get access to stuff,
Yeah.
but at school,
It's an excellent question, and I don't have an answer that's really direct, other than as from planning principle is all I can speak to. I'm not a senior, and I can't speak for anybody, but from planning perspective and urban design, we're trying to get populations to be mixed again. You know, there was this pattern of isolating different projects and different types of populations over the years, and maybe some people like that, and that's totally legitimate. And that maybe living here wouldn't be for a person who would rather be just around seniors. That's fair. On the other hand, maybe there's people that would like the action of living on a town green and having kids running around. And so maybe this would be sufficient for that. Or I'm not going to speak for anybody, but having kids and seniors together is not always such a bad thing. It's got drawbacks, I grant you that, but it's also there's some real positives that come of that as well.
The other thing, I think Moore Court is pretty distinct from Green Street School. It looks like it is close on the map, but it's pretty physically distinct from Green Street. There's not a lot of connection to there. There's a fence there, and there's a grade there, there's a big hill there.
It's a really big grade change. Yeah.
Was that?
It's a big grade change.
Yeah. And there's a few parcels in between.
It doesn't seem very connected.
I'm sure these units can hear the kids running around out back. But,
no, that's true.
But it's different than.
Not at night though. I mean, school's not in session at night.
It's not. It hasn't been a problem.
And this would be a different. This is definitely a different environment. And the R.S. Roberts parcel is even more so. This was remember we're talking about the list of 10, and we talked about this the last meeting, so I'm going to keep trying to move quickly here. But this is Austin School, and this is the school itself, 91 Maple Street, and down at the lower corner, around this corner on Maple Street, is the Wheeler House. And there's a fair amount of open space here, and this is a steep bank from this parking lot down, so you could build something into the bank. We don't need to talk too long about it. We as a committee decided that it probably wasn't appropriate because of the highway, just proximity to the highway and a disconnect from a neighborhood. It's not part of the neighborhood, which is, in our opinion, a fairly important quality. This is an exit to Sancy. This is an undeveloped lot. Here is Vermont Country Deli, the highway, Arbor Hill. You know, Arbor Hill is considered a fairly successful. It's not entirely senior, but it's kind of a senior geared development. So this could potentially. What's that?
55 and up.
55. Did that mean? Did they hold that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it is. I guess you call that senior. You knew it was only a matter of time.
AARP at 50.
Suffice it to say, we didn't keep this on the list. Access to Route 9 is a real problem. It's not really connected to a neighborhood, although the residences here are fairly nice, and there is action. There's I suppose you could walk to Memorial Park, but it just didn't have the characteristics of the other ones that we looked at. This is what we call the R.S. Roberts site. Here's Canal Street, Fairground Road, out to the high school. Sorry, Rhonda. The Price Chopper. This is a really interesting site. And again, I'll speak to it from an urban design point of view, in that you have residential development, single-family residential development, and you have commercial services, rescue. The hospital is up here. I said restaurants. commercial activity, and you have this sort of the drugstore. You have this vacant lot that's flat here, and it kind of drops back down in here. This has a lot going for it, in our opinion. This has municipal water and sewer, and it's close to services. It's flat. It's developable. It's got owners that are actually somewhat interested in working with us. I beg you, if the doubters in the room, just to open your mind for a minute to what this would look like with a really nice, one of those other buildings like the Colonial, that yellow building on High and Oak, something that has architectural characteristic, and then maybe some quiet space in the back.
How big is that piece?
That is 2.5 acres.
And it's got 2 accesses.
It's got 2 access, which is really good.
Yeah.
Access here and access here.
And it also has very appealing financing possibilities.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. There's potential for brownfield redevelopment. This is an old auto body shop, and it's been reviewed by the brownfield program. And this is in the New Market Tax Credit District.
So actually, so also is Moore Court.
In the new market? Oh, fabulous.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, that's great.
It's an important financing tool that you can use for housing, for affordable housing. So, and I meant to mention that the last time, but Moore Court's also in.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know. Super.
What was he saying?
I'm sorry.
I
There's an important, fairly new program that you can use to access private investment in affordable housing. It's called the New Market Tax Credit Program. And so Brattleboro qualifies. Not all of Brattleboro is in it, part of Brattleboro is in it. Roughly it goes from the post office out to Guilford Street and down almost in a straight line to Guilford, and then all the way across back to the Connecticut River and up to the post office again. So, yep.
This is an interesting parcel. This is what we call the Algiers Meadow. This is actually in Guilford. Whoops. Here's Route 5, and Algiers Center is down here. There's a country store. The Housing Trust is building 17 units down here. They've just brought municipal water down here. I'm not sure where the municipal sewer goes, but this is a sewer district. There is municipal sewer.
You know what? It's associated with the visitor center. It's a funky arrangement.
I know it does go down Brattleboro Road.
It goes, yeah, and then it.
I don't know how.
It ends near Partridge Road.
Yeah.
It comes up to about where Partridge Road is. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think it goes. Oh, it does go up to Commonwealth, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, it goes all the way
On
up.
the other side it does, yeah, because they feed into the sewer and it's the delta.
It doesn't go over the hill, Adam. It goes down to the business.
It goes down,
to
yeah.
the visitor center, and
And
then
then down
there's
around.
one huge pipe that takes that all the way. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it takes it all the way and it goes to the wastewater treatment plant on the Connecticut, back up in Brattleboro.
This is a very interesting parcel because
Much more interesting than that project. It's just
isn't that it's served by municipal water and sewer, and it's rural.
right.
Okay.
Very good.
And this whole parcel is conserved by an organization called Guilford Preservation Inc. And part of the agreement to keep it under conservation, they have a deed covenant for 5 acres of land dedicated to senior housing. That being said, Guilford Preservation Inc. has a real vested stake in this parcel. So this parcel, while very appealing in that it's open, rural, close to quiet activity, has a real ownership issue with it. We'd like to pursue it. Guilford Preservation Inc. is interested in partnering, but there's a lot of hurdles to cross before this one comes to fruition. This did make the short list of 6. It's got real interest, but there's ownership, and then timeline is another one. You know, so the Housing Authority really needs to take action within the next 3 years, and that can't be guaranteed with this parcel. This is called the Russell parcel, and this is off of Edward Heights, Lawton Drive. This is like Brookside, the Dollar General, Mr. G's. This is a very nice parcel, but it didn't make our list because it was kind of removed from any removed from residential development and commercial services and civic services, public transportation, and it would be a little costly to develop, so we took it off the list. This is what we call People's Bank and Renew, so we call it the People's and Renew parcel. It's a pretty interesting parcel. Putney Road is here, Country Pet and Top of the Hill Grill. It's actually got fairly good access. It's nice open land. It has potential. It's not. I'll say this. I'll just sum up our discussion as a committee in that it's didn't make the list of 6, but it's waiting in the wings for more study. We're gonna keep looking at this because the Green Mountain Apartments is up here, Adair Heights is down here. There is some potential. The town would really like to see more residential development along Putney Road. That's a, what would you call that, like a substitute or your on deck parcel. Alternative. Thank you. Okay. This looks a little confusing, and you have a list. This is a printed out list. I don't expect you to really digest this fully, but what I'm going to say about this is how we looked at those 10 parcels. And you'll see that it's a list of criteria down the side, and I'll go quickly, but feel free to stop me.
I have a question of how did you judge? Because in each category there's three boxes.
Right. So these are the 10 parcels that made that intermediary list right here, and this is how they were judged for cost and constructability, proximity to services and community, quality of space, safety and security, what kind of impact it had on the natural resources. And each block, if it had 1 block, it was below average. If it had 2 blocks, it was average. And if it had 3, it had a lot of attributes going to it. And really, all I want this to do, you can study this on your own. I don't want to spend a lot of time with it. But what you can tell, kind of quickly looking at it, is that some of these sites fill up a lot of blocks, right? And we'll look at that Renew parcel. Here's that Renew parcel right here. And if everything had 2 blocks, it would be your most average site. And I would put Renew at pretty average. You know, you had some above average characteristics in municipal utilities and access, and you had proximity to emergency services, it was below average. You know, ag soils, those are some ag soils, so it was below average. You would be impacting ag soils. And so these up here are the list of 6 that made it. And you can tell that these have more quality characteristics than the Austin School, the Asansi parcel, and the Russell parcel. And all that is to say is that these parcels met our criteria and our priorities a little better than the others. So the next step in the process for us was just to know that this sort of guides your instinct. You know, when we were looking at parcels, we had some instincts that, oh, this is a good one and this one is deficient in a certain way. This is just to sort of go down the list and say, am I forgetting anything? And it sort of reinforces our instinct on that. So with that list of 6 parcels, I'm going to show you just some sketches that we did to show you what it looks like, what these parcels might look like. And I'm going to really beg for your patience again because my slides are missing the pictures. But here we have the 6. Here we have the 6 parcels. We think Melrose Terrace can take 40 housing units, and they'll be family units. Okay. Here comes the patience part. I'm going to put a paper copy here, and I'm going to just pull up a file here, if you don't mind.
Do you have a plan to expand some of the units? Because these are mostly units for 1 or 2 people. When you put families in them, it's a little different.
That's it.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the head. So we've looked at these what you see here is obviously George Miller Drive and the brook, and this is what it would look like if you took out those 7 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'd be left with this inner core. You'd build a protective wall back here. You'd provide flood storage along the brook. And then these units, if we're going to put, our idea is to put family units that were currently existing at Moore Court into these units. Well, obviously these are 1-bedroom units, and we've looked at them, and these units are capable of taking another story, taking a second story. And actually it works out pretty nicely that you could have pretty nice places with 2 and 3 bedroom units. Just almost the same partition wall right up, and you'd sacrifice that downstairs bedroom to provide your stairway up top, and then above your living room there would be another 2 bedrooms. So this is our present choice course of action.
That means leaving the ground floor intact.
Yes.
You're not raising it up any higher above the ground.
That's right. That's where the flood wall comes, and that's where the flood wall would provide you flood protection. Now, it must be said that this is an idea, right? This is work this is serious work, and it's serious work in a flood hazard zone. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to take an interest in this. We did hire a sub-consultant, a stream hydrologist, whose own assessment supports this logic. And from an engineering point of view, the buildings support another story. So we like it so far. And we hope everybody else will too. Hope is not a strategy, though. We got to work on that strategy. Okay. I'm not on the slide. So this is Hayes Court, and you can kind of see the existing buildings underneath. And this would be 60 units at 2-story buildings. So in the beginning, you go back to Townsend, West River Valley Senior House, West Valley Senior House, Valley Cares.
Valley Cares.
That you can envision a building along the bank here that sort of shares space with the Richards building, and then you could these are, what you're seeing here would be 2-story, although this could be 3-story, 2-story. We have a couple different sketches. I guess that's the same sketch. Bear with me here. There are options here, but this is 60 to 80 units. Maybe even you could even maybe fit 100. That's 63 units at 2 stories. Forget how many. I guess I don't have a total here. But that was another 80 units organized around a green. This one pushes out to the edge of the flood limit. So that's why we sort of like this one a little bit, where the parking, you can park in flood hazard areas, so putting the parking to the rear, that seemed pretty logical to us. So, Moore Court. Moore Court, this is 75 units, and if you recall the slide I showed you before, I think 60 units is kind of an appropriate, an appropriate number of units. This is a little dense. So if you opened up this green, or you built this building a little longer and bigger in the back, there's some really neat opportunities for Moore Court. There's no doubt Moore Court could handle. It's 28. I think there's another one. That's just a simpler layout. That's 60 units. 3 20-unit building. Moore Court has great potential. It's got 28 family units, but a lot of those are 2, 3, and I think there's even 4-bedroom units there. And this just shows a building this actually maintains the same amount of spaces. This pushes the parking lot out along the bank. You can see it crossing into this parcel here. And this is a 35-unit building. This would be a 3-story building similar to, say, is it called the Village Green? Is that what that building is called?
Yes, it is.
That'd be similar to that. Again, this will take a lot of work figuring out what's going to happen with the green space. Western Ave through here has so much pavement. There's so much great opportunity for improvement for Western Avenue, and there's some really neat, creative ideas about how to make this green space area around the church and the parking. In my mind, there's a lot of potential here. This is a pretty simplistic rendering, but you get the idea. You could easily fit 35 units there for people who like being next to a school. And a fire station. But at least the church is right there. What is that?
And don't forget the 3-story building, because most of us only want to live once floor.
I'm sorry, Rhonda. The single floor
No, I
development.
know.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
the heads are shaking,
Yeah.
and I'm saying what everybody else probably don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a single story, that's what's so great about Melrose. It's a
It is.
single story, and it's great that
Melrose is a really nice development, and that's the hardest part of all this, is that it's just a great development. You know, it's not often that you look back to developments of the '60s and say they did it right. You know, they got a lot of things right, but unfortunately,
people with families seem to get involved, and people with disabilities and seniors seem to get nothing. And I think that's a crime show. I speak, I mean, I'm going to shut my mouth, but I know that people here are shaking their heads and they're agreeing with me. I've made some comments, they're shaking their heads, they all agree. And I understand you guys are in a bind, and that's fine. What I'm saying is, taking a place like Melrose and I understand there's a problem with the laws and stuff, and putting families down here, that's a crying shame. And then taking people from here and then building a 3- or 4-story building at Moore Court, which is not what the people want. They don't want to live next to schools. They don't want to have a 3- or 4-story building. Maybe some do, some of us don't, and I happen to be one of them. I don't do stairs, and I cannot do elevator. And everybody will, I mean, half this room is shaking their head when I'm talking. That's what I'm saying. I think there has to be a happy medium. Somehow, can we find it?
Mention elevators, mention elevators.
yeah, there's probably not a response that's going to satisfy you entirely, but all I can say is that construction these days is not what it was, and so efficiency of construction means you're building up. The cost of land and the cost of materials means that you're building up, and you're using elevators. And the best thing you can do is provide open spaces outside, balconies, gathering areas, open areas. That's all we can say. And maybe you could, maybe Guilford Preservation would hear us and allow some development here, because this would, you know, this parcel slopes down from, slopes from right to left. So this would be a neat development where you could have 4 units, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and you could enter to a single story above, and you could enter to a single story below. This shows 24 units, and this parcel has capacity for quite a bit more. You could do the same thing. This is, just to give you an orientation, this is the uphill side, and you would come down, and you would have units above and units below. Guilford, in our meetings with Guilford Preservation, I don't know that they really have the stomach for 40 units. You know, it's a rural setting, and they have their interests in this parcel, so we think 24 units might be about it. And the last one is R.S. Roberts. This is just blown up a little bit. You can see Walgreens here and Fairground Road. And, you know, I do appreciate that there are a lot of kids coming back and forth every day. But there's also a lot of other good attributes to it. You could create space out back, and you would be part of the action. There's no doubt about it. But this parcel has a lot of potential. We like it a lot, and
So you hadn't thought of, see where the existing auto body shop is?
Yeah.
They're sort of developing it on,
down in there.
well, no, you know, like almost two sections.
Right. Right. So you could almost build back in here, away from the street, and have a lower. You know, you could have a 3-story building that had 1 story coming out the front and 2 out the back. Or something.
Yeah, and sort of landscape it to, you know.
To this direction.
Yeah, right.
And there would be open space back here.
Right, because it falls off to the right of the picture.
The break line is about here.
Yeah.
This is all flat,
Yep.
and then this breaks
That
down.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a neat idea. I think that's totally awesome.
And it's walkable to a lot of things, medical, stores,
Yeah.
bus.
2 different pizza shops.
Bagels.
For which there
That wraps up that portion of it, and let me just see what I have here. So now I think I appreciate that people spoke up during the discussion. I'm just going to zip through. Sorry about that. Look over there for a second. So you don't get a headache. There we go. And I appreciate people offering their ideas and their opinions and their concerns. You know, we hear it, we know it. It's a real challenge that they built Melrose in the location that they did. You know, and you combine that with the fact that there's just not a lot of developable land in Brattleboro. But we're pretty happy with the places we found. That R.S. Roberts lot has a lot of potential. The Academy School, it's got some obstacles, but it's neat. And Guilford Preservation has some real potential, but we have some miles to go before we have the final answer.
If they say the village and Melrose, the ones they say, it's definitely gonna be family.
Yeah, I would say it's not going to be senior, disabled, or child care facilities. Those sensitive populations are just.
You mean seniors are not a family?
I don't know how you classify that. If you had the family with a senior living there, I don't know that would disqualify you or qualify you. It's when you talk about, my interpretation is that there's senior housing that is, you have to be a senior to live there. And that's not what this would be. I think family housing means that you could live there with your family, but it's not dedicated senior housing. Is that?
Yeah.
A lot of it relates to the financing sources as well.
Yeah.
And the definitions they have.
Isaac pointed out that a lot of this has to do with the financing sources. And, you know, there's regulation up and down the board, and then there's these funding agencies that have to conform to the regulations, and they have their own conditions for financing. So you know, it's back to that purpose and need statement where the residents are the priority here. You know, like having a nice place for everybody to live is really the priority, but it's not the only priority. There's a lot of interest and a lot of stakeholders that have to be accommodated. Yeah.
Maybe what was being asked is, you don't have to be under 55 to be in a family. You can be. So you have to have children? Or how are you going to define family?
Yeah, I'm not the person to define it. Like I said, I think that it's a definition about like having only seniors and disabled versus having families. And a family with a senior is different.
Yeah.
And that seems to me like that would probably be fine. But you wouldn't be living in it as a senior housing development.
Some of it's also architecture. A lot of times senior housing is smaller
Yeah,
and not suitable for having multiple people, more than 2,
Yeah, but what I heard was, you know, I'm a senior, you know, I wanna live in Melrose. I have lived in Melrose. I'm not a family. I don't care, I still wanna live there. So if I'm over 55, I can't live in family housing?
I don't know how it works with the.
I heard you every, up to there, but it didn't make, it's not the same, you can't live there. It's just not gonna be senior only or disabled.
Perhaps.
Just a question, isn't the number of family in a family depend on the number of people? Because a family needs more bedrooms than one bedroom or something like that.
That's what drives a lot of this, is the size of the bedroom. And, excuse me, typically, elderly and non-elderly disabled housing is efficiencies in one bedrooms. And families, you get into 2, 3, and 4. And that's really what defines it, because you start getting larger, and don't even call it family, you get larger groups of people living together. You know, the definition of family is pretty wide. But it's really the bedroom size, and it is, in public housing, it's the distinction that HUD has made on that particular property. So right now, the 3 properties that we have, the high-rise, Hayes, and here, under HUD definitions, are for the elderly and non-elderly people with disabilities. That is considered in FEMA world and flood insurance world and HUD world as critical populations that cannot be and should not be housed in flood hazard areas. And that's where
So,
It comes
so,
together
they-
there. Right,
they-
right, that's-
in other words, I get it. All right. In other words, the seniors are being booted out. Yeah, I mean,
no, the seniors are not being booted out. Let me finish, Mary. Let me just say this. We all like, Rhonda, we've been listening.
No.
So we all like Melrose. Okay, we all love Melrose. We love it. It has been senior and non-elderly disabled housing since it was built. The laws have changed. The rules have changed. The environment has changed.
So if you're a senior, you go and sit on a mountain until you die?
No, but the world has changed a lot since Melrose was built. And everything about housing and HUD and who can live where and all the rules, there's been a sea change here, no pun intended. And it's not that the seniors are getting booted out. That's what this is all about. If we were going to boot the seniors out, let me tell you what we would have done. We would have closed down the 5 buildings. We never would have had the battle with the town. We would have let 30 people find their own places to live, and we would not have adopted the strategy that we did.
May I say something? All right, I think that in that you're answering the real question, which is, you know, from the standpoint of your restrictions, as far as government regulations, all right, it is not possible for seniors to stay here.
Absolutely.
In the long
Yes.
term.
That is
That's
true.
what I was trying to clarify.
That is
Because
true.
what I was trying to get at was, if you were going to turn these into family units, and we talked about mixed housing and so on, mixed neighborhoods, then why couldn't you have some smaller units too,
You could.
that seniors could live in?
You could.
Aha.
You could. It could be a mixed development, but you could not have very many of them.
Right. You're looking at that,
Okay.
if you
You
could
could
go back
not.
to that
Yeah, that's all
floodplain
I was
map.
trying to get
Right.
at, Chris.
And I think, to come to Chris's defense here a little bit, booted is a loaded term, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
what I see
Don't-
here
that's
is,
not
No, I wasn't referring to you, Chris.
No, I think it's
No,
what
it's just-
Rob said. It's a loaded term. We're not booting
Yeah.
anybody.
Please, before you leave, sir, would you want to ask your question? Sorry.
so,
Go ahead.
I think I think what we're trying to look at is, luckily, Brattleboro Housing Authority has more than one parcel of land that it owns in Brattleboro. And so if you ask the really big question, given the current guidelines and the current restrictions and the current opportunities for funding, and you open up the big question, okay, if I take all my pieces off the board and I get to put them back on the board, can I arrange them differently in a way that maximizes the number of units I can get, which is important for everybody, but also puts people in situations and environments that meet expectations that have already been expressed about how attractive they are and how well connected to the community they are, and those kinds of attributes. So, you know, one of the nice things about the Algiers parcel, for example, is that it's really pleasant and it's rural and it's green. And for some people,
sign up tonight?
yeah, it's very attractive. And I think for many people, that's exactly what they're looking for, and that you may be better off having a car and all those kinds of things is okay for them. There's other people that look at that and think they don't want to be that isolated or dependent on a car. And so for them, more court actually looks great. You know, they're not troubled by that position. So it's just, if you open the whole question up again and say, okay, what happens if we just rearrange the entire thing? Who benefits and who loses? And I'm sure there's families at Moore Court that are not here tonight that are like, no, and they, you know, I hope they wouldn't use that loaded term, but they might feel under pressure that somebody's making a decision about their future that means that they're not going to stay there forever. But yeah, and they might actually be a little anxious about where the plans for them are, you know. So, you know, I think it's just, there's a lot of constraints, and it's trying to just maximize as much as we can here. So I just, yeah.
It's been answered, thank you.
I have a question. Alive?
Let me take it off.
There you go.
I just want to say that I know a lot of people here afford cars. I can't. I don't want to be somewhere where I can't get to a shop, I can't go anywhere.
So
I feel like I want to be in town. I don't want to be out somewhere where I can't get anywhere. And people don't offer you rides, because I've
tried that.
been there.
So Iris Roberts, for instance, could be really good.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that or more court.
Yeah.
That was a big criteria, was bus service, that there would be
Yeah,
bus
that's
service.
right. I used the
The
bus
Algiers
service.
site, there was going to be bus service going down to
Yeah.
Algiers.
Mhm.
I mean, the Putney Road, one of the things with that is there would be a walk to the bus.
Yeah.
And that's why it kind of was pushed back, because that was.
I don't mind walking a little
So you
ways,
can
but
get
I do
places.
need to get places, and I don't
Yeah.
have a car, I can't afford one.
Right, right.
And I know people with cars don't think of that.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Part of what we're trying to do here is to figure out options, because clearly what we've heard tonight and what we continue to hear is that not everybody likes the same thing. And so we're trying to get some options together, but as Rod said, this is it's very regulated, and we are going to be at the mercy of a lot of funders. And, you know, we're going to fight the good fight to keep options open to people, so that it's not just one building and everybody has to go there. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. Yeah.
I'll add to that the concept that we've developed, I think, is fairly unprecedented, you know, in this sort of, in the complexity of at least three developments, affecting three developments so profoundly. It's just not how I mean, the pattern of development has always, these floodplains were developed because they were the last flat land available, and it's all gone, and it's all regulated, and the way out of it is not easy. It really is a challenge for all of us. Did I say him?
Yes, I've asked you this, and I gotta ask you again. And you're getting, it's a broken record, but the existing buildings at Hayes Court, they will be coming down, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple
Yes.
of people from Hayes, and you said it time and time again, and I know that, but I mean, you can send people, you've done this actually before even Melrose, this happened with Melrose, you said that. But I mean, it's coming, the existing buildings have outlived themselves, is that correct?
Yes, they have.
And they are coming down.
Yes, yes. And the buildings at Moore Court have outlived themselves. And the irony that is not lost on us is that the buildings here are structurally very good. You know, they made it through that storm. I mean, there was a heck of a lot of water here. So the buildings, that's why we keep trying to hold on to a part of this property, because there's a very complicated, very intense calculation that you have to do for HUD on your property to decide or to give them the information on which HUD people decide whether that building or set of buildings can be rehabbed or whether it should be demolished. And that calculation has been done for Hayes, and it absolutely, HUD will not give us the millions of dollars that we need to try to renovate that. It's not possible. I believe that Moore Court, those buildings, from the studies we've done, I believe those buildings will also be in that category. Parts of Melrose, the parts that are in the floodway, are all automatically in that category because of where they are. HUD will not want to see us putting any more into these buildings than we have. And we've had to go through a lot of environmental reviews to do the repairs, not just with the town, but with FEMA, just to do the repairs. And I think that one of the reasons we were successful in getting all of these levels of approval is that we kept saying and we kept demonstrating that we were going to really try hard to move this population, move you folks out of this floodway. And it was really on the basis of those very earnest and very honest statements, and that we were able to back up, that we were able to go ahead and get approvals to make the repairs. Because there are a lot of forces, and this isn't just the town, there are a huge number of forces out there that were saying, you got elderly and disabled folks right in the floodway, you gotta be kidding me. And we had to make the environmental assessment just for the repairs that FEMA has now filed is over 100 pages long. And that's just for the work that we did at Melrose. And we were able to successfully argue that the best course of action was repair and to let people come back, because we were going to start this planning process and you all needed a nice place to live while that happened. And that's the argument that we made, and I hope we will be successful at the end of the day, and all will go through just fine. But right now, that environmental review is in front of the regional administrator in Boston for FEMA, at 100 pages. So, you know, I can't tell you how many agencies and how big the forces are that are looking and working and putting pressure on this little housing authority in Vermont. It's sort of mind-bending at times. So, you know, that's sort of the bigger picture. And yes, Hayes needs to come down. It meets those tests. HUD is not going to give us the money. And those buildings could not be renovated. We did that study. They can't be renovated enough. I think more will meet that. Ironically, the parts of this development that are in the fringe are structurally such that they probably wouldn't make it. They probably would not make that HUD analysis, and therefore HUD would say, well, find something else to do with those buildings. And that's what this is all about, is really trying to weave our way through all of this, and at the same time, always with the goal of finding and creating good housing for you folks that isn't in a floodway.
And unfortunately, it means that people, in the long run, will have to leave their homes, and for some people, it's been a long time, and that's the hard part
Yep.
to swallow for you folks here, especially because it's beautiful here. I mean, it's just a really amazing place, and you don't see that everywhere, you know, you don't. And I understand where people wouldn't want to go into 2- or 3-story buildings when you have a little cottage community here. And but I think, you know, at some point,
change.
things have to change, unfortunately, because of the situation. And
Change, go find the woods.
Go sit down. Maybe we'll find one and build you a little cottage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
They can't have elderly and seniors, but they want their children.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little funny, but I guess I figured
That just occurred
it's
to
fit
me.
enough to run, I don't know.
They're at least wise enough to say no groups of children.
Yes.
So it's like, the presumption I assume, when whoever wrote that rule, is that a family can take care of the children. And
It's actually it's a presidential executive order that really is the big factor here. And that presidential order was specifically defines and states what the critical populations are that should not be in flood zone or flood hazard areas.
I want to mention, I'd be remiss, Rhonda reminded me, you don't have to stay for this, but I just...
Just run the bathroom.
That's fine. She also reminded me that somebody else had brought up a question about energy efficiency and what are we doing towards that end. And it overlaps with the question about Hayes Court and Moore Court, is that those buildings are just so energy inefficient that the new standards, whatever gets built through Vermont funding agencies have such high standards for energy efficiency. And that's the public funders saying, if we're going to be spending money, we want to be prepared for operational cost increases over time. And whatever gets built is really going to be almost top of the line, stuff that you're not going to even see still getting built in the commercial market. And that's really important. It will be considered. It has to be considered. And a little side commentary is that construction is just ungodly expensive these days. It's ironically, with this economy in decline or stagnation, some things that have not come down commensurately are the costs of commodities. You know, and the copper is as high as it's ever been, and the cost of wood is as high as it's ever been. So, building is just incredibly expensive, and operating these buildings is incredibly expensive, and it's really a challenge for this whole process to make that work in a nice way for everybody.
$235,000 per unit.
That's
Probably a good bet.
wow.
In this process, this is just the first step in what will be a very long planning process, and then we will need to get all kinds of permits, and we will need to get funding, and we will have to go to design. And one of the things that we're trying to do with the website and all these public meetings is to communicate as much and as often as we can with everybody. So this level of communication is not going to end. There may be a lull because we have to go through a lot of procurement. We have to go out to bid for a lot of consultants and all that jazz. But as this continues, we will continue to put this in front of you, and we will continue to say, you know, here's the best we could get for you folks, and that's what we're going to keep doing. So I just think that I want to let you all know that. I know people are starting to say, when am I going to get moved? When's the relocation kick in? You know, all of that. Don't even go there. Do not go there. Because frankly, between now and when that actually happens, the rules could be very different. So if I quoted you relocation rules that exist right now, I can guarantee you there'll probably be changed by the time we actually get there, and you'll be saying to me, well, Chris, 3 years ago you said this. Why did I tell him? So it's a long way to go. We will keep trying. Please call us, and even though I can react strongly, please make your comment. As you know, I was called tenacious the other day. I'm very polite.
I've only been here 29 years,
Oh.
I just stay a little bit longer.
Okay, well, you've got a few more years.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm new to the process, but this looks like an amazing effort to me, I'll tell you. Congratulations.
Next public, I said it at the beginning, next public meeting is September 20th. Please come, keep asking the questions.
You didn't slide where you showed how many